Hello again, and welcome back to the Better Than I Found It podcast. We have a very nice episode coming up today for all Baylor fans out there, basketball fans, sports fans in general, even some golf fans. There's some good stuff in this episode today. It's with a very special guest and a good friend of yours, Coach. It's Scott Drew on the podcast today. So.
Yeah, I'm really excited to have Scott come on here today. For one, I respect him greatly as a coach, and he actually gives some good insight to his type of coaching style, so that'll be really good for people to hear.
Yeah, and if you haven't been on social media or read the news the last few weeks and don't know who Scott Drew is, he's the head men's basketball coach at Baylor University, and they just won the national championship a few weeks ago. But we'll get back to Scott Drew and the interview with him in just a few minutes. But Coach, let's do some updates on the program first and foremost. So we just had our regional selection earlier this week.
Yeah, actually yesterday we just found out you go through that regional selection. There's always a lot of speculation. Where will they send us? How's it going to look and that type of thing. And everybody speculates, but the truth is it makes no sense to do that because you're going to go where they tell you to go. And we're really excited that we're going to Stillwater at Karsten Creek in Stillwater, Oklahoma. I'm really excited to go back. All of our guys have competed there. It's a course I obviously know very, very well, having seen it basically on a daily basis for 16 years. We're real excited to go back to Karsten.
Yeah, and you saw the whole thing get built. So I was there as an assistant coach for Texas Tech during the national championship in 2018. That's when the Bears were there last as well, but we did get to play it on our way up to the Big 12 championship in Kansas. So let's get a few words from you, Coach, on the Big 12 before we talk a little bit more about the regional. But Big 12 was last week, as we spoke about on the podcast, in Hutchinson at Prairie Dunes Country Club. What were some of your thoughts?
Well, my first thought is I know people realize from what I've been talking about all my career that Prairie Dunes is one of my favorite places in the world. It's just a very special place, very unique, very unusual. And so I always have a great attitude going to Prairie Dunes. And honestly, I don't let the golf affect my attitude about Prairie Dunes ever. So I've won championships up there and played some pretty poor tournaments up there as well. What I know about Prairie Dunes is you always come out a better player, always, when you spend 3 or 4 days there. And I think our guys did that. We kind of started the tournament kind of not so well and kind of got into that 6th spot, and we never left it the whole week. We just basically stayed right there. I think we had potential to finish, second or third or fourth pretty easily if we'd have done the right things, just didn't do it. And but my thoughts are I know our players are better because of the experience.
Yeah, I agree. We had wins were projected, and we got them. We got about 25 the first day out of the South, and then kind of laid down a little bit the last 2 rounds, which played different. But I agree with you. I think our best golf is ahead of us right now. We had a couple nice finishes from Colin Kober, who's come back from injury, and Mark Reppy. They both notched top 10 finishes, so that was nice to see. And we're excited about the regional. So circle back to the regional a little bit more, Coach. So Karsten Creek, Stillwater. The number 1 seed is Oklahoma State, which, by the way, they won the Big 12s last week, so congrats to them. What are some keys for us in your mind heading into the regional?
Well, I think, when you go into the regional, you understand the season's brand new. I mean, the championship portion of the season is upon us. And so really nothing that's happened leading up to this point can affect you in a negative way or a positive way unless you allow it. So, I mean, to me, if we were riding a super high and won every tournament, the last 6 tournaments, it would feel a little bit different. But to me, we're brand new. We're tied for the lead at the regional tournament right now with 13 other teams. And let's see if we can't break out of that tie and stay at the top of the leaderboard. But it's a great place. Yeah. I love Karsten Creek. It's a really tough challenge every day. And everybody knows that. And so the teams that probably do the best job of not letting themselves get upset when they make a bogey or a double bogey are probably going to come out on top. You don't overreact to things like that when they happen. But there's some good scores out there too. Mm-hmm. If the wind doesn't blow, you can get some really good under par scores out there. So it's a golf course that's challenging all the time, which I love. And I think that should play into anybody that's got a good competitive heart and a lot of fire, they're going to do well.
Yeah. And our guys are competing this week as well. A lot of them are as kind of the prep for regional, which I consider the best prep we could have possibly. Cooper Dossey's at the Walker Cup as the first alternate. And then we've had several guys play. Mark Reppy played a pre-qualifier for the Monday qualifier for the PGA Tour event. We've had several guys in U.S. Open local qualifyings. So I think we're in a good spot. Looking forward to heading up there. We'll be heading up later this week when this podcast drops. But circling back to this week's guest, Coach Scott Drew, talk to me a little bit about watching that team this spring. That was one of the highlights in Baylor sports history, watching their team perform.
No doubt about that. And what's unique, and Scott speaks to this in the podcast, they were the number one team in the country last year for quite a bit. I think longer than anyone else was number one. And then COVID hit. So like everybody else in the country, in every sport, they were disappointed. We had a chance. We thought we were going to win, that type of thing. But basically all those kids came back. Not all of them, but some of them graduated. But the idea is they had to come back and compete and like establish that number one ranking, reestablish that dominant. They did it. They came back, I think, even better than they were last year. And it's a really cool story about some things that Coach Drew talks about that the coaching staff did that I think helped them prepare to be, champions this year. But and they had a COVID issue this year. They had 21 days where they didn't even get to play basketball. So they overcame a lot. And honestly, I've watched a lot of sporting events, been a fan of a lot of teams in my life. I'm a big sports nut, like a lot of guys that in the coaching profession. But I don't think I've ever been as proud and as excited watching an event as I was then, and nervous.
Yeah,
I was very nervous because, but I don't know why I was nervous. They completely dominated that game, but it was a lot of fun to watch. And Scott talks about a lot of things there. He also gives some really good insight to coaching. Mm-hmm. And Scott's if you've ever met him, he's one of the most positive, energetic, and it's not fake. It's real. It's all the time. And I think people feed off of that. And I think even in dark times, people are lifted out of some bad places because of his energy. I wish I had as much as he does. I think he's great. And I'm really proud that he's at Baylor and happy for him, because you could argue that what he has done at Baylor is one of the great turnarounds in the history of college sports, in any sport.
For sure. Well, his energy is unmatched, but I do think you come very, very close, though, Coach. So I think you should give yourself some credit there.
Thank you.
But yeah, he is 100% genuine. I was telling him before we started the recording that probably about 7 years ago, we had a recruit in for golf when I was playing here, and we were watching a football game, and basketball was there with a few recruits, and Scott Drew happened to sit next to my now wife, who I was dating back in college. And I told him, you probably don't remember this, but you guys sat there and spoke together for about 2 hours, and you were the most genuine and awesome person to my wife and I that we got to know you back in college. Then, we've been super fans ever since. So he's super genuine, an awesome coach. So let's hear from Scott Drew.
Welcome back to Better Than I Found It. Have a really, really special guest today, a Baylor legend and just a really good friend of mine, Scott Drew. Thank you for coming on the podcast today. Thank you for taking the time.
Well, thanks for having me, and thank you for your friendship. I've learned a lot from you, and part of that championship was in part learning from your wisdom. So thank you very much.
Well, I don't want to take any credit for that, because if I told you my basketball career when I was in the 4th and 5th grade, you wouldn't believe it. So we're not going to go down that road. Listen, Scott, congratulations, obviously, on what I consider one of the most amazing accomplishments, certainly in Baylor history. But, I've watched competitive athletics and had favorite teams all my life since I was a little boy. And I've never watched with more pride, excitement, nervousness any sporting event than the finals of the national championships. I want to thank you for giving me my greatest sports moment. It was amazing. So thank you for that.
That's awesome. I mean, I'm glad you enjoyed it, and I'm glad that we made sure that we kept it. My mom always doesn't like close games because she says it's too hard on her health. So I'm glad also we were able to keep that margin because, Gonzaga is obviously a real dangerous team. And we didn't want to keep it at 1 or 2 possession game with all their offensive firepower.
I was thinking about what I could compare that. And the semifinal match against Houston as well was a dominating performance. But I remember watching Tiger Woods win the U.S. Open in 2000 by 15 shots. And watching him dominate that field was just about, I know you're going to be too humble to say this, but you guys dominated both games. It was impressive.
Well, you come up with a game plan, and then sometimes it just works out better than you thought. And our guys really were dialed in. And at the end of the day, you have to make shots, and you have to be playing your best basketball at the end of the year. And God had a great plan. Instead of us playing Gonzaga on December 5th, we ended up playing them on April 5th, and that worked out great for both of us going into the game, and then obviously worked out well for us after the game.
Yeah, it was fantastic. Well, listen, I'm intrigued, and I always have been, by great coaching. So I think I've read right at 150 coaching biographies and or coaching books. And I continue to read. So I'm not reading your book. I'm watching it play out in person. But I want to find out a little bit more about you as a coach. And I want Baylor people to know a little bit more. I know there have been tons of interviews, and a lot of people have done this. So my podcast is not going to be the end all video or interview of all times. But I do know something happened that's pretty amazing. Last year, you guys had one of the best teams in the country, if not the best, and ranked number 1 for as long as anybody had been the whole year. And then COVID hit. And so I want you to describe how you guys handled that, how you coaches handled that, and then how you were able to sustain that incredible run into another year all the way to the finish line. So I don't know where to go with that, but I just want to know about that sustained success with 2 great teams right in a row.
Well, as you know, and Mikkel knows, sometimes we learn as much from our players as we teach them. And I remember when last year we were on the verge of being the number 1 seed for the first time in school history, and positioned to hopefully go to a Final Four, have a chance to win a national championship. And then you find out the NCAA tournament has been canceled. And you're obviously devastated, disappointed, but really disappointed for Devontae Bandu, Freddie Gillespie, Obim, because they didn't have a chance to play in the NCAA tournament. And we're meeting with our team, and being with the wisdom that he possessed for an upperclassman came on display. And right away, you know how you're always sad in the last game, the last time you meet with your team, because you think of all the great memories and the journey you've gone through. But instead of us being upset about COVID or the season being over and what could have been, right away, changed the whole mood in the room and said, hey, let's just focus on the positives. We won 23 games in a row. We set a Big 12 record, breaking Kansas's longest streak of wins in a row since 1996-97, being ranked number 1 longer than anyone since Kentucky, and I think in 2015. So he just changed the whole dynamics of the room. And then right then and there, we all celebrated the season. And that really helped, I think, with us coaches. It helped with the players. And that was kind of the mindset. And then from there, as we know, God always works things out. And we had a couple guys that were interested in pursuing professional opportunities, but not having a chance to play in the NCAA tournament, make a Final Four, do the things they had on their goal list to want to accomplish. That was in part laid down the foundation for them returning and coming back this year. And if we'd have had the NCAA tournament and maybe we lose in the Sweet 16 or the Final Four, maybe we win it all last year. Who knows? But I know not having the opportunity to play had a direct correlation to this season from the standpoint. I think some of the players came back partly because of that. And with them coming back, not only were they coming back because they wanted to be a Baylor, but they were motivated to have a chance to play in an NCAA tournament. And as you know, with COVID this year, everybody's had to adjust. and everybody's had to been flexible, and the student athletes have done such a great job persevering. But we also have to thank the NCAA for allowing us to have an NCAA tournament because, again, not everybody plays in the NBA. And that's a dream for everybody growing up to be a part of that. And Dan Gavitt and the NCAA being able to put that together deserves a lot of credit because it was a great memory for everyone that had a chance to play in the NCAA tournament this year. But I definitely last year not having the tournament led to this year's motivation in not only coming back, but also having an opportunity to do something in the tournament, which we were able to do.
Well, and I appreciate you saying that. So a lot of good things happened and the synergy was just right. And you came back and started playing great again this season. Yeah. And then COVID hit you. And how many days were you guys without practicing basketball as a team?
Well, so there's really a 21-day break there. And we had so many people with COVID, staff and players, that there's only a handful of players able to do anything. So really it was, as we know, there's all different types of pauses. Some are contact tracing, and then players are able to work out, keep in shape. And then if you have COVID, obviously that's different. You're out for 14 to 17 days, depending if your degree of COVID. And so with us, what was really hard was once we were done with that, you're in the middle of conference and you take 3 weeks off, and now all of a sudden you come back, play 6 games in 14 days. I don't care what sport it is. It's hard to go out there and after you take 21 days off and now go play in a Big 12 game or match and try to be successful that are normally in basketball 1, 2, 3 possession games. And obviously you're off 6 games, 14 days, no practice really to be had in between because it's just game prep. So it was a blessing when we lost in the Big 12 tournament. We didn't know that at the time, but looking back, it was because it gave us additional practice day and an opportunity to get prepared and ready for the NCAA tournament. And it wasn't till we were able to practice that we were able to really get back to our stride. And it was another blessing being in the bubble because we didn't go back and forth. We stayed in Indianapolis, which also gave you additional days to practice. And then most of all, as we know, player-led teams are always the best. And our guys realized that our defense we'd gone from number 1 defense in the country to 44th analytically during that short period of time. So they were convinced they needed to get better in practice as well. And when players are convinced they need to practice, that's completely different than coaches saying we need to practice. Because especially as we all know as coaches at the end of the year, and especially tournament time, players aren't always bought in on practice and the importance of it. They're more geared to the games. Hey, I'm going to save myself. I don't want to get injured. I don't want to go so hard. I'm tired of the monotony of practice. But our players really had some of our most competitive practices of the year, which allowed us to get back to where we were at prior to our COVID and allowed us to peak at the right time.
So you as a coach, does that take a little checking your ego at the door to say, hey, I'm not in charge here? The players actually are leading this charge. I mean, did you do a little bit of that?
Yeah, well, that's one of our staples, and that is we believe in player leadership, and that's usually the upperclassmen leading the way. And as we all know, a coach-led team is good, but a player-led team is great. When players take care of all the discipline, they take care of all the little things, they make sure everyone's on the same page and everyone's focused, then coaching becomes a lot easier. And I think you probably attest to this. Our players care what we think, but they even care more what their peers think. And when there's that peer pressure to do the right thing, to compete hard, to be coachable, and they're leading the charge and they're taking care of themselves, that's when your teams can be special. Because at the end of the day, again, that common bond, they're the ones out on the court, they're the ones on the course, and them motivating and leading the charge is always better than a coach having to direct everything.
Well, but I love the fact that you actually recognize that it's actually a part of your standard as a basketball program. So I think that's wonderful. You come across to me as one of the most enthusiastic guys in all of competitive athletics. Mm-hmm. So I want you to tell Baylor fans, how real is that? Because I see it all the time. I see it in our coaches' meetings. You're that way with everybody. You show everybody respect, but you're always enthusiastic. And I call enthusiasm in golf the 15th club in a golf bag. If you've got enthusiasm, because you have to have it. But as a coach, it's incredible. Talk to me about that.
Well, you know, the older we get, the more that we need a little help, and coffee comes in to help with that enthusiasm. But my dad was really positive, optimistic, energetic, and I think I've just inherited that. So good genes, but that's how I saw him coach. So we all know that whoever your mentor, who you ever learn from, that's a lot of times how you do things. And we try to do it with great energy, great enthusiasm. A lot of the coaches that have been on our staff have provided that as well. So as you know, it takes a village to raise a man. And we're blessed to have a great staff that provides that energy and enthusiasm. And our goal is, I mean, we spend so much time with our student athletes nowadays. We don't want them walking in the gym and being like, oh, we got a 2-hour practice, a coach getting on me. We want them coming in to be excited. This is a place we want them to want to be at. And to do that, a lot of times we got music playing and we're having fun. We're trying to do it with the smile. As we all know, a smile's a universal language. Everybody understands that. So we just try to do everything with passion and enthusiasm and positivity as much as possible.
Well, you're talking about your coaching staff, and you've got a great coaching staff, top to bottom. But I want to talk specifically about Jerome Tang. I think he's one of the most interesting stories in all of competitive athletics. He's been with you 18 years. Talk about loyalty. He's been with you 18 years. Talk about friendship and culture that he's helped you build. Talk to me about him. I think Coach Tang is amazing.
Yeah. Well, and thanks for recognizing that, because we feel the same way. And again, as a head coach, your goal is always to help your student athletes achieve their goals. And it's the same thing. At the same time, your staff, you want to help them achieve their goals. And I know Coach Tang would like to be a head coach. I know he's had opportunities to be a head coach, but Baylor's done a great job in making him feel valued, appreciated, and he hadn't had to just leave to get a job. He's waiting for God to give him the right job and where he wants him. So that's a blessing. You have an administration, athletic director that allow that to happen as well. But Coach Tang's been here every day since we got here, and it's such a blessing as a head coach we all know when we hire a new staff, the first year you're teaching them more than, and they're just absorbing what you want. The second year, they really start to give back. The third year, they're rolling. And when you've had someone 18 years, I mean, it makes it real easy, because when I'm not there, or he recognizes, we did this 10 years ago. It really worked. This is something, as head coaches, we go, oh, really? I forgot about that. So it's great that he can not only bring back the past, but also he's somebody that knows exactly what I'm thinking and how I'm thinking, and I know what he's thinking. And we made a great team together. I've been blessed to have so many great assistant coaches. Coach Mills went to the Sweet 16 in Oral Roberts this year. Grant McCaslin beat Purdue. Coach Driscoll's won 3 out of the last 5 or 6 championships with his conference at North Florida. So he's done outstanding. But Coach Tang's been here for 18 years. We wouldn't have built this program without him. Very humble, very hardworking. One thing I've always loved about him is it was the same goal that I had with working for my dad. I wanted to be the best assistant coach he ever had, and that's been one of Coach Tang's goals. And he's someone that's happy for other people's success. Again, great energy, great enthusiasm, outstanding at what he does, and deserves as much credit as anyone for what we've been able to accomplish and do here at Baylor University. And what I love about him is he loves Baylor, and he cheers for every sport, involved with every sport. But he's definitely special.
He's definitely an inspiration for me. I was an assistant coach for many, many years for Mike Holder at Oklahoma State, but I was also a high school coach like he was before he got into college coaching. And so I really relate to him and his experience, and being a longtime assistant coach. I was that as well. I was an assistant coach for 8 years. But let's go back real quick before we finish here. I've got one more thing I want to talk to you about. They've replayed and replayed and replayed your first press conference at Baylor. And I've got to tell you, I get chills when I watch it, because what you said that day sounded almost arrogant. It sounded almost unbelievable, dreamland. Nobody except you, and I guess the people that hired you thought, man, is he really serious about this? Just talk about that. How sincere were you that day? Because it came to fruition. Talk to me about that first press conference. I'm amazed by that.
Well, I was amazed how much more hair I had back in the day. but and you kept yours, so you've been blessed. But as far as when I felt led to come to Baylor, I prayed about it. I believed in the mission and what the leaders wanted at Baylor, and I knew that we'd gone to the Sweet 16 at Valpo, which was the largest Lutheran school in the nation. But being in the Big 12, as you know, if you can win the Big 12, you can win a national title. And with the student athletes, the facilities, the resources here, there was no doubt that we could win a national championship. Back in the day, I'd have probably thought it would happen sooner than 18 years, but God's timing is always best. And, in 2010, we went to that Elite Eight and really Duke wins it all. And you're like, man, we could have won a national championship. 2012, we lose to Kentucky, who wins it all. And that was Anthony Davis year, and they were really good. And you're like, man, we're probably second best that year. And you, at that point, you really know how close you are. But at the same time, then you realize you don't get back until we did this year. And you make that Final Four, you appreciate it so much more the longer you persevere and the closer you've been where you don't achieve it. It's kind of like being in golfing tournaments and finishing runner-up a couple times. You win it, you just appreciate it that much more, where if you win it right away, you don't realize how blessed you are, and the one thing that I've been so excited about is just how our players have handled the platform God's given them, and with their joy interviews and just how they've carried themselves and represented Baylor University. It's been phenomenal. And again, at Baylor, as you know, we have so many great coaches. I've learned a lot from you. I love reading your book. I know you're one of the best in what you do, and 14 to 17 sports ranked in the top 25. 4 were number 1 this year. So iron sharpens iron. I think we all learn from each other. But what I love is everybody's servant leadership and humility that we all possess. Because if Jesus came to serve, we all can come to serve, and we all know great coaching is serving each other and serving our players.
That is well said. And again, I want to remind people the culture of joy that you guys established this year happened well before you won the championship. So I think that helped lead to it, but definitely was something you very intentional on your part. So before we finish, I just want to say again, congratulations on an amazing year, an amazing career. You're a young man. You're not even close to being done. But I do want to say this, the name of this podcast is Better Than I Found It, piggybacking off my book that I wrote. But I want to tell you, I want to thank you so much for doing that at Baylor. You have made this place better than you found it when you got here. And I know you're going to continue to do that. But thank you so much for being a Baylor Bear. And thanks for joining us, Scott.
Well, appreciate that. And best of luck to you guys when we find out who we're playing. And let's go win that national championship.
Sic'Em Bears, Scott. Thanks. See you.
Thank you.
Well, I certainly hope you enjoyed that interview with Scott Drew as much as I enjoyed being a part of it. He showed you a lot about who he is and how genuine he is. And I'll say it again, I'm very proud that he's on the staff here at Baylor. And not just because he won a national championship, but because of the way he represents the school and the way he treats his players. And as you saw, Jerome Tang, his assistant coach, has obviously been treated very well through the years. Scott Drew is a treasure, in my opinion, in coaching. And I hope he gets to coach for a long, long time. Thank you for listening to the podcast today. I hope you enjoyed Scott Drew.